Good to go, Erin?
Perfect.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this afternoon's media availability. The order of presenting is Mayor, Adam Laughlin, Interim City Manager, followed by questions to both of them. Please go ahead, Your Worship.
Well, thanks, Katrin. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for tuning in today to our update. Today, Council's Emergency Advisory Committee discussed the relaunch of aspects of the economy consistent with Phase 1 of the province's relaunch plan, which the Premier just announced will go ahead, at least for us, tomorrow. Now, we're pleased that Edmonton is among the regions to proceed earlier based on our performance and caseload data. Now, I'm sure this is welcome news for retailers, restaurants, farmers markets, some medical practitioners, and others who will benefit. The city also made some important decisions today. We extended, again, the city's state of local emergency to ensure that during this critical period of reopening, city emergency management officials continue to have the agility and the tools they need to make rapid adjustments, if needed, to protect Edmontonians. With our community partners, we continue to run programs at the Expo Centre, and we continue to face significant public health risks. And while we can see some sunshine ahead, it's far too early to say that the emergency is over. I am very pleased with the work that Adam and his team and many others within our city family have done to ensure Edmonton is ready to take the important steps needed to restart and relaunch parts of the economy safely. This relaunch is very exciting, but I want to stress that while we're relaxing some restrictions, we absolutely must remain vigilant. COVID-19 is still very much a threat to our public health care system and potentially to our loved ones, and we want to prevent serious outbreaks that could result in another lockdown and further delay in future stages of reopening. So please, use your common sense as you start to move around in our city. If you're a business and you're thinking if a business you're thinking of patronizing appears busy or a restaurant quite full and you're not sure you'll be able to keep a safe distance from others, please consider removing yourself from the risk and visit another restaurant or business, or go back at a time when that business is less busy. Crowds remain a significant pandemic risk. Now, I know that summer will also become another temptation for folks, but this will not be a normal summer. Nothing is normal because we're still very much in the midst of a global pandemic. So let us not erase our hard-fought gains against this virus by being reckless in any way with the health and safety of ourselves or others. This reopening is a very fragile time, and we need to be careful so that we do not upend our reopening. And our economy means nothing without our health. So this is why we must continue to practice good hygiene habits in a way that will keep our communities safe. Edmontonians have done a remarkable job so far of flattening our city's curve, and let's keep up the good work and continue to scrupulously follow AHS guidance on this. As Adam stated in this afternoon's presentation to the Emergency Advisory Committee, relaunching will be based on assuring that we are complying with provincial and Alberta Health Services requirements, and relaunch for the city will mean taking into account what is necessary, sustainable, and affordable for us to carry on with as a city. Now, I do also understand that the province stated in their media availabilities today that Calgary and Brooks will reopen more slowly than the rest of the province. And we know that this virus is not constrained to any one municipal boundary, and so we echo Dr. Hinshaw's advice and ask the potential visitors to our city from those regions wait to visit until their city or town's restrictions are lifted, with the greatest of compassion for the challenges that people are dealing with in those communities. Now, during this critical period, as cities across Canada consider their relaunch options and timelines to provide essential services, it's never been more important and timely to highlight our call for crucial provincial and federal support. I mentioned earlier this week that as Edmontonians start to go back to work, they will need a robust transit service to get them where they need to go. The maintenance of essential services like roads and bridges is key, And local services and housing for vulnerable residents also remain key. Emergency services like police, ambulance, and fire service also need to continue to be funded, and residents and businesses will need ongoing support as they navigate changing guidelines and restrictions. All of these services, and many, many more, are provided by the City of Edmonton. Demand for our services has not gone down during this pandemic. They have, in fact, in many instances, increased. City Council has tried our very best to balance the financial constraints we faced as a result of this pandemic with our priority to keep Edmontonians safe and provide them with the services that they need. So just last month, Council adjusted the operating budget, reducing expenses to allow us to absorb an estimated $164 million shortfall to city finances due to COVID-19. And although the revenues the city uses to provide services have been significantly impacted, we were determined not to pass those costs on to property taxpayers. And we have been doing our part to trim costs, but it might still not be enough. And the reality is that without funding and support, the city will not be able to return to previous service levels at service levels that Edmontonians are used to, with respect to transit, for example. So the support that we're calling for will help fund critical programs, and to support these programs, administration has been behind the scenes making very difficult decisions to support our most critical lines of business. And that includes prioritizing the funding of certain programs and services over others. And we heard of one of those examples today with the city's decision to keep Rundle Park Golf Course closed. As Adam stressed earlier in today's presentation, that decision is a financial one. So all this taken together is why mayors across the country continue to call on provincial and federal partners to help ensure and support Canadian municipalities. Cities are an essential partner in this country's economic resiliency and recovery, and if we don't have the tools and resources to be there with and ahead of recovery, that is a risk to the very economic recovery that we need. But Edmonton is interested in doing its part to reboot our economy, and we just need the support to ensure we can provide Edmontonians with the essential services that they need to thrive and stay safe. So thank you very much. I will invite Adam to offer some comments of a more technical nature, and then of course we'll be very happy to take your questions.
We transition to Adam. I want to once again thank the extraordinary interpretive services of Kevin Culp and Diane Deondrad. Over to you, Adam.
Thanks, Katrin. Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and good afternoon. I'd like to thank Edmontonians as well. Your collective efforts to adhere to the public health requirements of physical distancing, regular hand washing, and an avoidance of mass gatherings have made such a difference to our COVID-19 response. Edmontonians' commitments to keeping themselves and others around them safe is the main reason we are able to develop the city's plan for restarting our economy. Now more than ever, the city, the province, Edmontonians, and businesses have a shared responsibility to ensure the reopening is successful. We expect that reopening will be even more challenging than closing was. The changing conditions and uncertainty that Edmontonians have weathered gives us hope for more progress in the rest of our COVID marathon. In the past week, the city has taken important steps to build the framework of our relaunch and develop the first steps for relaxing economic and social restrictions. In our discussions with the Emergency Advisory Committee, we reiterated that our relaunch decisions will be based on assessments of what is necessary, sustainable, affordable, and in compliance with the province's health and safety requirements. We want to take advantage of this unique opportunity in front of us to respond appropriately and effectively to these new conditions. There is no flip of the switch in this relaunch. Instead, we will make thoughtful and intentional decisions that reestablish stability and resiliency in Edmonton. Stage one of the province's reopening strategy will begin soon. And based on the announcement this afternoon, our understanding is that it's tomorrow. In advance of this, administration has been supporting businesses with information and guidance about protecting their employees and customers, finding the balance between startup, reconnection with customers, and adherence to health restrictions has been challenging for some. During stage one, the city will continue to ensure compliance of the province's public health restrictions among businesses. At the same time, we will explore the feasibility of reactivating some of the services we deliver. And an early reactivation target businesses, the city and Edmontonians in a move to stimulate retail activity. I'm pleased to announce that effective May 19th and until the end of the year, rules around retail patio expansion are relaxed. This will support businesses in increasing maximum capacity in safe ways and will add to the vibrancy of our city in the summer. The city will work with the business improvement areas and member businesses to articulate what best works for their specific area. For businesses that are not in a business improvement area, we will promote this opportunity via our social media channels, on the city's website, and with our partners like the Chamber of Commerce. We're developing city guidelines to establish clear expectations and requirements for businesses, and we will provide ongoing support to answer questions and help create conditions for success. The key message here is the success of this activity depends on shared accountability between the city, the businesses, and Edmontonians. Each of us play a role for this concept to work, and each of us must play our part. I do want to be clear that there is an application process related to this, and that must be completed before pursuing expansion of the patio. Next week, we will provide updates on decisions covering e-scooters, shared streets, sport courts, soccer and premier sports fields, playgrounds, skate parks, picnic tables, and the ongoing shared streets initiatives that we have underway. Stage one decisions that will be shared with committee next week cover a number of other services, including Animal Care and Control Center, the Edmonton Valley Zoo, e-park fees, summer camps, and city facilities such as City Arts Center, John Jansen Nature Center, John Walters Museum, and the Prince of Wales Armory. We also advise Council of recent actions. Community garden expansion is expanding to include 30 new garden locations. Applications are being accepted between May 12th and 18th. The reopening of all dog parks are happening, and that's effective Saturday, May 16th. And as we mentioned previously, the reopening of Riverside and Victoria Golf Course were effective Monday of this week. We are also developing a guide to simplify the do's and don'ts for living safely and adhering to the public health restrictions. It's an online toolkit that will be live this weekend. The toolkit for daily life interprets provincial health orders in a simple way and lays out what we know, what we advise, and what's not permitted. It will be housed on the city's COVID website. It will be updated frequently and referenced in social media posts as a reliable source of accurate information. As the Mayor mentioned, the state of local emergency was renewed, and that provides us the flexibility to deliver city services within public health requirements during the reopening transition. The state of local emergency will remain in place for an additional week, and because the relaunch is not straightforward, we now have to balance the protocols that keep public health in mind with the activities that give business confidence that they can thrive. We are highly engaged in this analysis that will inform our decisions, and we'll be providing that to the Emergency Advisory Committee next week. I do want to thank Edmontonians for their resilience and the ongoing support for each other. These qualities are essential for our success through the reopening and recovery stages ahead. And the Mayor and I are happy to take any questions that you have.
Thank you, Adam. We have 4 reporters online. I'll go first, please, to Dustin Cook. Dustin, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. My question is for Adam. Adam, with the relaunch happening as of tomorrow, are city employees, frontline city employees, going to need to wear masks? I'm thinking transit operators, fire services, waste, and employees at the eco station. Do they need to wear masks as per that provincial guideline, and does the city have enough?
The approaches for personal protective equipment that we have in place right now for our frontline employees do not change based on this relaunch. So we continue to operate based on the safety parameters that we've developed previously. So this relaunch doesn't really change that. What it does change is for Edmontonians visiting particular businesses and the guidelines that have been developed by the province, that there is an encouragement to use masks specifically in areas where you can't adhere to the 2-meter physical distancing requirement.
Did you have a follow-up, Dustin?
I do, yes. On transit, right now there are, with businesses going back and people going back to work tomorrow, no plans to change the reduced transit service. Any specific concerns for that related to especially the reduction in night service? And is this choice being made because you don't think that the demand will increase that much right away, or financially based?
So the decisions around transit is it's very difficult to anticipate and model the ridership expectations that we have on the basis of a relaunch that in terms of the details or guidelines has been somewhat limited up until this point. So difficult for us to predict, but what we have done in terms of the move to the Saturday service and then, the weekend service and then providing enhanced is regularly monitor any pressures that we're experiencing on the transit system and then quickly adapt. And we would have the same measures in place if we do see a jump in ridership demands. And that includes any ridership demands that are after hours. We would monitor that. The one thing we do need to balance is the efforts that we've taken in terms of the reduction in late hour service were to accommodate some of the other issues that we experience in terms of transit being used, quite frankly, as a rolling shelter. So we just need to balance that against the demands that are out there. And we would continue to do it the way we've been doing it, which is to monitor the routes, to monitor the demand, and adjust the service accordingly. If we get into a point where it's a contemplation of getting back to a regular weekday service, that would be a budget discussion that we have to have with council. And it was mentioned today in the EAC meeting that we are getting constrained in terms of our ability to provide some of the services, the essential services in this time.
Thank you, Dustin. We'll move on now, please, to Natasha with the CBC. Go ahead, Natasha.
Hello, thank you. In one of your slides, Adam, supporting stage 1 businesses, lists retail and then daycares, restaurants, some personal services. Could you clarify which personal services the city is kind of sanctioning to reopen as of tomorrow?
Thanks, Natasha. It's actually not the city that's sanctioning to open. It's actually the province identifying that those businesses are eligible to open. It's still their choice. And in terms of some of those businesses, it would be barbershops and salons, and I believe that's on the provincial website.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. Do you feel that some of these businesses, as you mentioned, hair salons and barbershops, are still actually quite nervous about doing this? And of course, they don't have to reopen yet. But do you feel like this is giving people a false sense of security that this could be moving too fast? What's your sense of that, like separate from the province?
Well, I think based on Edmontonians' performance, honoring or adhering to the restrictions that are in place, the data that we see in terms of the number of cases or the slow climbing cases in Edmonton, there is an opportunity to restart the economy here and allow businesses that choice to reopen. What I would say is that a safe opening of those businesses with respect to public health does have to be done in consideration of the guidelines that the province has developed. And so from the City of Edmonton's perspective, from a monitoring and compliance perspective, we want to make sure that the businesses are carrying out their reopening in alignment with the guidelines that the provincial public health body has provided for those businesses. In terms of my comfort level with it specifically, I would say the guidelines have gone a long way to help with that. There's still areas of ambiguity, and in the end, I think it is the business's comfort level around opening. They need to be comfortable, and they need to ensure that they have the systems in place for themselves, their employees, and the customers to safely open.
Thank you, Natasha. We'll go next to Vinesh with Global. Go ahead, Vinesh.
Hi, Adam. This is a question for you. And, with respect to all the work you guys are doing, I guess the question I have, why is it taking so long to get full clarity? The province announced the stage 1 plans, and then, there was the initial city kind of, reaction. But now we're hearing, next week we'll get further details, I guess. So what happens between now and next week, and why not sooner, as people are, quite anxious to know what's going on?
Thanks, Vinesh. Part of what we need to do is respond to what the province provides. And so the guidelines that were provided by the province related to some of these stage 1 activities were just recently provided. In fact, I believe they were just provided earlier this week. So there is a degree of review and response to that. And I would actually say that we responded exceptionally quick to some of the information that's been provided by the province in our ability to support the businesses in opening. In some of them, there is still ambiguity, and that's why we need that extra level of time to assess and confirm from the City of Edmonton's perspective that there's a good plan in place for some of these other activities. Some of them are actually City of Edmonton facilities, and so like businesses that are wondering whether it's time to open or not, we're doing the same thing with some of our facilities.
Did you have a follow-up, Vinesh?
No, that's good. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Vinesh. And we'll go next to Joseph with CTV. Go ahead, please.
Hi, I just want to know with the when it comes to the patio expansion, can you just go over again, what the exemptions are going to be? And I know there are some details that were left to be worked out. So can you just go over about how this process is being eased, what exemptions there are, and what still needs to be worked out?
So under normal circumstances, expansion of the patio would come with a development permit or other permits to permit that patio expansion. And what we're doing is creating an online form, one-pager that identifies the business's intent to do that, whether that be on the public road right away, the sidewalk, or example, a question came up today, in a parking lot that's owned by the business. They would either need a permit from the city or a development permit. And so what we're doing is streamlining the process that allows the individuals to submit, like I said, a one-page form online that identifies their intent. And then we would have to assess that against the transportation needs within that area, specifically if it's on the road right away. So what we're really streamlining here is the ability of the businesses to signal their intent, and then it allows us the ability to respond and work with them, work with the business improvement areas to come up with the right solution for those specific needs.
Did you have a follow-up question, Joseph?
Yeah, just to clarify, for if someone or if a business already has the permits in place for prior, from my understanding, I think it's a 5-year permit. Or if someone wants to build new, how does that go? Do they still have to pay like that $500 for the initial fees, and it's just for the expansion itself, or how would that work? Just for clarification there.
So if they have a permit in place already, they could proceed. One thing we'd want to do is make sure that we're connecting with them, and our folks are doing that to ensure that in this time we're providing enough space to safely accommodate pedestrian traffic if it were on road right away. For others, it's as I mentioned, filling in the form, showing their interest, working with their BIA, and getting it set up. In terms of the fees, and in this particular scope of work, we're actually not charging for this application.
We have time for a few final questions. Do you have anyone?
Yes, it's Dustin.
Go
I
ahead.
do. I'm wondering, off of the patio expansion, if the city will be campaigning to the province to then look at expanding liquor licensing. If these patios are expanded and service will need to be expanded with it, I imagine liquor licensing falls under the province for that. Is that something the city will be campaigning for to go with this?
In terms of the patio expansions, that would fall under the license within the existing facility. So they would already have that. If the patio expansion is in another location, that question actually came up in the Emergency Advisory Committee meeting today. We would have to look at that in the future, and if that meant also looking at the relaxation of liquor license, we'd have to engage the province. But my comment at EAC today is we have to first tackle the immediate needs, which is the potential expansion for some of those businesses, and then in the future look at the future as part of our reimagine work, look at the future opportunities related to patio or other expansion.
Are there any other final questions? The mayor would like to supplement that answer.
Yeah, Dustin, it's a great question, and just two things to add on that. I totally agree with Adam. The first priority is actually making the space available and reducing the permitting burden on the city side. Your question about a liquor license and any other health and safety licensing that is in the provincial domain, I think the province has sent clear signals about red tape reduction in this regard, and I just want to suggest that the city is very willing to work to expedite our side of it and then support businesses to move through in a seamless way any applications they would need. The province has already made some changes not too long ago around patio rules that may make this easier, but clearly we'll want to work to help the businesses be as successful as possible while maintaining that social distancing. And I think I can't speak for the province, but from all of my conversations with them, they've asked us to let them know of any regulatory impediments to business recovery. So if they arise, certainly we'll act on those.
Are there any final questions from anyone online?
I've got a bit of a
I have one
follow-up.
more for clarity. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Natasha,
No.
go ahead, and then we'll come back to you, Dustin. Go ahead.
Well, Dustin can do his follow-up if it's directly related to what the mayor just said. Go ahead.
Go ahead,
It's
Dustin.
probably going to be Adam, but it is related. Thank you, Natasha. The fees that may have already been paid for these patios, will businesses be getting refunds on those? I imagine patios are already going up today, so will those be refunded?
Good question, Dustin. I don't have those details, but we can circle back and email that to you.
Thanks, Dustin. Thanks for waiting. Natasha, go ahead, please.
Thanks. It's a bit of a follow-up to Vanessa's question, and I just wanted a little bit more clarification on rules around sports courts. It was Adam had mentioned during the meeting that it has to do with not sharing equipment, and that it's challenging to play sports while you can't share equipment, and then referred again to the provincial guidelines. So Adam, when are we going to hear, are you waiting for those specifically from the province before deciding on sports courts and skate parks and such things?
Well, the province has actually provided some guidelines related to sports courts, but we've heard conflicting information related to, from a health perspective, the use of sports courts. So what we need to do, and I mentioned the ambiguity in some of these guidelines, that is one where we do have some ambiguity. So what we need to do as a municipality is assess the information that's been provided by the province, identify how we think sports courts could be operated under the public health guidelines that have been created, and then developing sort of our supplement to that and running it by the provincial health body to ensure that it's in line with their thinking to create that clarity. to allow the use or not, depending on the situation. So it's really maybe a shorter way to say it is province has guidelines for that right now, but they're not clear enough for us, so we need to do some additional work to create clarity for our citizens.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate you being with us, and we'll speak with you soon. Thanks.
Thank you.